The first 2 episodes of Doctor Who Season 1 have finally aired, but were they any good? Okay, so I just wanted to do a quick video on my first impressions of the first 2 episodes of Doctor Who Season 1. I'm not going to be doing these first impression videos for any of the other episodes. It's basically just because we got these 2 episodes on the same day, and I might have to stagger out the reviews, which I am going to do. I'm going to do some full in-depth reviews for both of these episodes, 2 separate videos for them, but I might have to stagger those out a little bit more than I was originally planning, because when it comes round to the week where I'm going to review Boom, or when I'm meant to be recording the review for Boom, I'm going to be very busy that week, so I might be a bit late to doing the review for Boom. I might not have a chance to do it on that week that I was planning, and so I might have to stagger these reviews out a little bit more so that the Devil's Chord review comes out that week and the Boom review comes out the following week instead. So I thought, because it's going to be a while till I get my review out for the Devil's Chord and a little bit longer than I wanted to get my review out for Space Babies, I thought I'll give you a quick first impressions video instead. And another reason is because I don't know if you can tell from my voice, but I've got a bit of a cold at the moment, so I'm just not really feeling up for trying to work on a full review for Space Babies and the Devil's Chord right now. But it's mostly because I need to stagger these reviews out because I'm going to be busy for the Boom review. But yeah, once it comes around to after that point, I think I should be able to get them out pretty much as quickly as possible. So it's just for these first couple of reviews because of us getting 2 episodes in 1 week and how busy I'm going to be for episode 3. So I will probably talk about more of the plans of when I'm going to be releasing them later on in this video, but with that being said, let's talk about Space Babies. Okay, so Space Babies is a fairly standard Russell T Davies opener episode, in my opinion. It's maybe a little bit weirder than some of his other opening episodes, but when you think back to a lot of Russell T Davies, in particular, series openers, they're never really like the craziest or like best series openers ever. They're always just kind of like a standard run-of-the-mill episode that kind of introduces you to either the new companion, or for series 1 and this episode's case, introduces you to the Doctor and the whole concept of the show. We're just kind of a little fun romp happening in the background, which is definitely what this episode is, although it's probably a little bit more sillier than those ones. Although with that being said, we have had episodes like Partners in Crime with the Adipose, which is a little bit silly as well. But I think this episode does the job of that really well. Obviously, it's incredibly heavy on like the exposition about everything in the show, kind of introducing the new viewers to the show, which as a long-time viewer, it can be a little bit annoying having all these different things that we already know about introduced to us in the space of 1 episode, or I guess even like the first act of the episode, where the Doctor basically laying out who he is, what the TARDIS is, how the TARDIS works, discussing Gallifrey and Time Lords and all that stuff. But obviously, you've got to bear in mind, this is the first episode to be going on Disney+. It's the start of a brand new era. It's season 1 again, so it does kind of make sense why they're doing that, and it's just a little bit annoying for long-time viewers, but for brand new viewers, it works really well, and I think the exposition's done fairly well in this episode. They are throwing a lot at us, but like I said, it kind of makes sense because you've got to introduce these new Disney Plus viewers to the show. And as for the Doctor and Ruby, I think they're absolutely great in this. I've loved both of them even from the last episode we got, the Church on Ruby Road, but they just really shine in this episode. They're even better in this episode, and you can tell they're just having a lot of fun, and I really love the dynamic. And I've said previously in like the Church on Ruby Road review and stuff like that, that the 15th Doctor hasn't really had his Doctor moment yet. I feel like he pretty much has had that in this episode. He's even had a couple of moments like that in this episode, particularly when they're doing the whole kind of end of the world rehash kind of bit where they've opened the big window and are looking onto the planet, and the Doctor's kind of explaining why he does this stuff and what his life is like. That's a very Doctor-y moment, and also when he's talking to the babies, I think that's a very Doctor-y moment as well. So I will say he definitely has had his Doctor moment now, and you know, I've always felt like he is the Doctor. It's just that he hadn't had his Doctor moment before this, in my opinion. And yeah, I just love the playful energy between 15 and Ruby. I just think it's a great dynamic between the two. As for the plot of this episode, like I said, it's just a little bit of a silly one, a little fun romp. I thought the episode as a whole was just okay. I'll get more in depth with the actual plot when I do my full-on review, but overall I think this episode was just fine. There was some funny moments in there, and there was also some kind of scary moments in there, but I think it balanced the tone really well. I just think it was a generally fun episode, and you can tell it's meant to be an introduction to a new era for a lot of new fans that haven't seen the show before. But I do think it was definitely a very interesting choice as a first episode to introduce the new viewers, with just how kind of weird the whole concept of the Space Babies were. It could maybe be a little bit off-putting for some, but like I said, overall I think this episode was an okay episode and a very fun start to the season, but it's definitely not my favourite of the 2 episodes. So with that being said, let's talk about the Devil's Chord. Okay, so like I basically just said, The Devil's Chord is probably my favourite episode of the two. It's definitely my favourite episode of the two. As I said, I did like Space Babies. I think it was a good first episode. It was just kind of an okay episode as a whole, fairly standard, a fun romp, but overall nothing too crazy. Whereas The Devil's Chord was just an amazing episode. It's definitely up there with Wild Blue Yonder now for me in terms of the new era, and it just hit a lot better for me than the first episode did. I think Jinx Monsoon's Maestro was an incredible villain. I like how she's connected to the toy maker. It just kind of adds to the stakes of the episode. It's just a very quick way of showing how powerful this villain is. And once again, the Doctor and Ruby are incredible in this episode. They've got a great dynamic, as I said about the previous episode. It's a very different tone to the last episode. This one's definitely a lot more darker and serious. Although obviously with still having Maestro, there is kind of those over-the-top kind of campy moments in there. But ultimately, you do feel scared of this villain, and you feel the big threat, especially when they go to show what the world would be like if they don't stop Maestro. But with that being said, there are some bits of this episode that I'm not the biggest fan of, that kind of let it down a little bit for me. One of them, which isn't as big of a deal, is the Beatles are very underused in this episode, which I kind of expected. I did kind of theorize and predict that they weren't going to be in the episode a whole bunch, but it seems very weird to me that they only focus on John Lennon and Paul McCartney. I know they're the most famous Beatles, but it does kind of feel very weird that George and Ringo do kind of get sidelined as if they just never existed, which is very strange. But like I said, that wasn't too big of a deal for me, and I'll probably get more into that when I do my full in-depth review. And the other big issue I kind of had with this episode is the musical number at the end. Now, I was expecting a musical number at the end, and I was actually personally excited for a musical number at the end, but it just didn't kind of work as well as I wanted it to or expected it to. It felt very kind of out of place. It just kind of put it there completely out of left field. There wasn't really a build up to it. Like, obviously the whole music had returned thing, it does kind of make sense, but it just kind of felt like it had been tacked on to the end for me. I know a lot of people have been saying that they kind of wish it was used as part of the big fight against Maestro instead of being after they got rid of Maestro, but I personally like how the fight against Maestro went, so I don't really agree with that. I just feel like there should have been more of a justification for that end musical number, and I also just don't think the music itself, the song itself for the musical number at the end was particularly that strong. So that's probably my least favorite part about that, and it also is just kind of very weird. I don't really know what it means because they're kind of breaking the fourth wall still a lot in that end musical number and after the musical number when they're kind of running along the piano keys of Abbey Road and stuff like that, and it's kind of like I'm kind of confused as to why that's happening. Now that Maestro is defeated and gone, it's kind of like, how are these magical things that the Doctor and Ruby are doing and making appear out of thin air happening? It's kind of very weird. But it's not that I'm against the whole fourth wall breaking stuff all in this episode. I liked a lot of the fourth wall breaking stuff, such as the non-diegetic joke and stuff like that. So although it sounds like I'm now having a lot of negative things to say about this episode, it was definitely my favorite of the two episodes we got. But one weird thing that I kind of want to talk about in regards to both of these episodes that I noticed that might even follow on into the next episode is I kind of noticed both of these episodes have a very small main cast and not much of a big kind of ensemble or guest cast as I was kind of expecting, or you kind of get from other Doctor Who episodes that we've had in the past. Obviously in episode 1 you've kind of just got the Doctor, Ruby and Jocelyn. Obviously you've got the Space Babies as well, but that's kind of just a whole group of babies. They're not really split up that much into individual characters besides maybe like Eric and maybe Captain Poppy, but then they kind of get sidelined a little bit after the first half of the episode, which I think was a good choice because they are a little bit distracting. So it is mostly just the Doctor, Ruby and Jocelyn. And then in terms of this episode, although we've got obviously the Beatles and Cilla Black and some of these other side characters at the start of the episode, as soon as the Maestro stuff kind of starts, it is mostly just the Doctor, Ruby and Maestro, and we just kind of forget about everyone else until obviously the Beatles come back again at the end. But once again, it's just John and Paul, and so it just kind of makes this cast of each of the episodes feel very small in my opinion, and I don't think that's going to change much for the next episode, Boom, with how limited the set is going to be and the concept of the episode. I feel like it's going to mostly just be focused on the Doctor and Ruby there as well, although we do know there's going to be more characters in the episode from the Next Time trailer. But I don't know, that's just kind of an observation I had about these first 2, maybe 3 episodes. It's not necessarily a negative or anything like that. I just thought it's very weird that we haven't had much guest cast or guest characters kind of in these episodes so far, besides some quick cameos from like the Beatles in episode 2, and obviously the space babies in episode 1. But let me know what you think about that. Like I said, it's not really a negative, it's just kind of something I noticed in the episodes. Okay, that's my thoughts on The Devil's Chord and Space Babies, the first 2 episodes, the double bill of season 1. Obviously, like I said, I'm going to be doing full in-depth reviews of these in the next coming weeks. The Space Babies review is either going to be next Friday or Sunday. I'm not quite decided which one I'm going to do it on yet, and it also might depend on when I manage to get them done. And the Devil's Chord review is going to be the week after that, so either Friday or Sunday once again, but the week after that one, because I'm going to be busy the week after Boom airs, so I'm not going to have much time to be able to get a review sorted for that one. So that week that after the Boom's just aired is probably going to be when the Devil's Chord review comes out. But once I've managed to get like the Boom review and stuff like that out, I should be able to be a bit more on top of these reviews for the rest of the season, hopefully. So there's not going to be any more of these first impressions videos after that point, as far as I'm planning at the moment anyway. It's just going to be reviews for each episode when I can finally get around to them, and should be able to get them out quicker than these ones. So like I said, part of it was just because we've got 2 episodes in 1 week for the first week of the show, and another part of it is because I'm going to be busy during the Boom review week, and also the fact that I've got a cold, which has probably impacted this video slightly because I sound awful. So if you want to see those reviews, the individual reviews for Space Babies and Devil's Chord coming in the next couple of weeks, and any of the following reviews for Doctor Who season 1, subscribe to the channel. And if you're watching this by the time I already have those videos out, I'll make sure to put them on screen now.